What are we doing? Oh, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Betwixt the Books, where we are going to be discussing some stuff today. I think we decided on we're going to be talking about retellings and fan fiction as a thing. There's going to be a couple different parts within there, but in general, we're going to be we were talking about retellings and whether or not retellings are fan fiction or is fan fiction retelling. You know what we're saying. You get the idea. You get it. You know
the unfortunate thing is that we started at fan fiction and then we moved into retellings and then we smushed them together. And then we were like, why aren't we filming this?
So this is what you're getting now. If you were like, gosh, I haven't seen you guys in a while, it's because Gretchen had finals and we were trying not to stress her out.
Sorry.
You're no worries. It meant I had less work to do and I'm fine with that. Lazy. In that time period, though, one of the things that I was doing was writing fan fiction, which is why this is apt. For no reason whatsoever, TikTok decided in January that my entire TikTok feed was going to be nothing but fan comics of Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach. Had I, at that point, ever seen or played any Five Nights at Freddy's games? No. Why was I pulled into this community? Because I like art stuff. And fandom, I guess, in general. I am a nerd, so I kind of get it. But for whatever reason, it ate its way inside my brain to the point where for the first time since middle school, I actually had an idea to write fan fiction.
Just cut it there. For the first time since middle school, I actually had an idea.
Yeah, probably also accurate, honestly.
No, that's not true.
You
had the idea to start this channel.
Fair enough, I guess. All right, that was me, wasn't it?
It was.
But yeah, so I've been writing fan fiction and posting that. Now, I'm going to be honest and say I was not and am still not a big consumer of fan fiction. Like, I know people who read fan fiction the same way that we read books, like thousands and thousands of words, fan fictions, like just consuming them. I have off and on read fan fiction depending on the different fandoms that I've been in, but I'm not like so deep into fan fiction that I would call myself an expert in any capacity. I'm not even going to propose that. Are you? I don't think that you are either, really. Not really, no, huh?
No, I read less than you.
Yeah. So
I think the biggest thing for me and the reason why I really got into fan fiction studies is, first of all, I had some people, because I'm getting my PhD and I've got a couple of master's degrees, and my undergrad, they were all in like English children's literature studies. And so children's literature studies is really strongly adjacent to fan fiction studies, as two scholastic communities where people who like want to tell you Shakespeare is the only real literature kind of look down on you. So there's a lot of back and forth between those communities. Also a lot of fan fiction, not all of it obviously, but a lot of it is written with young adult or children's literature in mind, or on those properties. And then also as a librarian and a bookseller, and Michaela as a bookseller, there have been more and more fan fictions that have crossed the line into like published books, right? There was such a long time where fan fiction had like this really bad reputation of just being like crap people posted on the internet, which poorly has written. There's poorly written books that get published. There's poorly written fan fiction. Like all of these things are true. But it's gotten such a hold in like mainstream popular like publishers taking notice of it, I think is a really big deal and speaks to the power of fan fiction at this point. So that's like my entry point.
There are huge readerships, and fan fiction is an easy way to get eyeballs on your work. As someone who like my fan fiction that I've been writing for just a couple of weeks has over 2,000 views, which to me is like madness. There's 40 people who get an email alert when I post a new chapter, which makes no sense to me. As like a nobody, like you don't know who I am or what I'm doing, but you've like read my stuff simply because I like am writing about characters that you care about, or like you enjoyed the world of Five Nights at Freddy's or whatever it is. Because you enjoyed this fandom, you want to continue playing in that space, you seek out other people who are also playing in that space in a different way. It is intriguing to me that then when you have to remove the elements of your fan fiction that identify it as fan fiction, because in order to publish it, it can't be copyright infringement of somebody else's work. As soon as you are making money on the work, it is no longer fan fiction. And fan fiction, like that's it. If you start making money on your fan fiction, that actually breaks copyright law and you can get sued for that. And it is detrimental to the entire fan fiction community if that were to happen. So, tangent. One of the things you can't do, for instance, is to send or is to bind your fan fiction into a book and sell that because you're using copyrighted materials. And I've seen people doing that, but like you can't make money
I don't
off
think
of
it's a tangent though, because I think it gets back to the point that we were talking about earlier, is like this, like a retelling versus fan fiction. Because I mean, to me, we were talking about like a fan fiction is one of the potential ways to say maybe they could be different is like a fan fiction is after or before, right? It's not,
yes.
And like a retelling a lot of times uses a lot of the same plot beats. Maybe not all of them, but usually most of them. But also like, I mean, think about 50 Shades of Grey, right? Which is, to me, a retelling of many of the plot beats in Twilight. It was started as Twilight fan fiction, just with a BDSM.
It was an AU. It was
what
if instead of like, vampire
right, like,
is
that's
rich
like
man.
To me, right? Like that to me is like
it is a retelling,
a very gray line.
Yeah. But it gets published as its own work and could, in theory, be read discreetly as its own thing. The reason I turned around just then was that I was grabbing The Chosen and the Beautiful by Nevo. And I think I figured out if you didn't know, this is a retelling of The Great Gatsby, which was one of like 3 or 4 that came out like a month after The Great Gatsby went into the public domain. And I think that's what allows something to become a retelling and to be packaged as a retelling, is that the content is now in the public domain.
Right.
This could not have been published before that point because of the fact that it involves characters who are copyright or covered by copyright.
This is literally the same word, except for one of them is like legal.
Yes, it's literally a legal thing. This is what if I did a self-insert character and I got to bang Daisy and Nick? Like, that's what this is. Why anybody would ever want to bang Daisy, I don't know. I never understood it. She's kind of a bitch, but it's in here. Queer with some fantastical elements. You know, it's there.
And I feel like there was also like so many, particularly YA books, like jumping on the fantasy when like, I think they're still fairly popular, but like there was like a really deep crush of fairy tale retellings. Although that's a myth and a legend.
Yes, but even still like.
Yeah. But I'm just thinking of like how many friggin' like Cinderella retellings did one need? Because I was also talking about like things like Cinder, like how far does a retelling go into the stratosphere? And like I also saw something that was billed as like a Sleeping Beauty retelling, but the only thing that was similar was that, you know, it was sci-fi, so she had been in like cryo sleep and then woke up, and I was like, okay, just because you use cryo sleep doth not
here's your fairy tale retellings.
Katie Roberts loves those.
She does. I have all of them now in hardcover in the fancy Kickstarter editions. Don't worry about it.
But those were also, I mean, again, I feel like those Katie Roberts books are more fan fiction than they are retelling.
Yeah, fan fiction.
If you don't know, so the plot of Desperate Measures, for example, that's the Hook one, right?
This one is Jafar and Jasmine.
Oh, right. That was what I meant to say, and I said Hook. The next one is Hook, I think.
Yes, yeah.
But so like this one is like, A, it's kink, it's very kink, and B, it's like Jafar gets Jasmine. Yes. So to me, that's not a retelling. That is fan fiction.
Yes.
Maybe it's not the right word necessarily, but like to me,
It is, yeah, because it's whereas a retelling is this is the plot of the story again, just and it's that one. If we were using fan fiction terms, I would say a retelling is going to be your alternate universes, which is if you took this story and placed it somewhere else. You made them monsters, you made them aliens, you made them pirates, like you did something to change the dynamics, which would fundamentally change certain beats in the story, but the idea is still fundamentally the same. Versus some fan fictions like the one that I'm writing, which is what happens next, or what came before this, or I don't know, what if somebody didn't die? Like that's another huge fan fiction thing. If the character you love dies, or what if they didn't break up? Like that's the idea of like, I would like the story had it gone differently.
Yeah. And I think that's, I mean, it's what makes some fan fictions publishable, is that because they take the story in such a new direction that eventually you can publish it as its own thing if you can remove enough of those elements. But I also think that, and I mean, this is not treading any new ground, I just think it bears mentioning that is, people talk so much about like writing, for example, Harry Potter fan fiction, and being able to insert identities that were not in the original series, and it's now become clear probably weren't there purposefully. And that's certainly not the only place where that's happened, but it's just the easiest it's the easiest target to hit for the purposes of this conversation. But in fan fiction you can make more people seen.
There's a lot of LGBTQ representation in fan fiction that doesn't normally get represented. So there's a lot of, especially with TV media, where in the last like decade or so, there has been a lot of queer baiting, where characters are very heavily shown to probably be queer, but it's never canonically shown. The fan fiction community then takes those characters and is like, here they actually kiss for you, so you can have the cathartic kiss moment that you never got because the show cock blocked you.
Or like the very traditional also kill your gays.
Yes.
Where you can say, this person deserved a happy ending and let me give it to them.
Yeah. The other thing you get is in the Harry Potter fan fiction community, which is the only other fan fiction community that I ever participated in. That was my middle school fan fiction, was Harry Potter fan fiction. We no longer stan JKR, and we no longer want anything to do with her, but a lot of the fan fiction that I was reading was like the Marauders. Like I want to read about Harry's dad and his friends and what they were like, because they were really cool characters that you like barely got to see in the story of like, these side characters were really cool. Let's interact more with them in their world.
But I mean, also, what is The Cursed Child but fan fiction? Like that, because she didn't write it.
No.
She gave them an idea and someone else wrote it.
Yeah. And then she was like, gold stamp.
Yeah. So that's just fan fiction that she said, sure, on. But like, that's, and I mean, I know there are people who even say that that's not canon. That's not their canon. I'm not going to step in that argument, but like, I feel like if the author didn't write it.
Yeah. Is it fan fiction? The thing that I was going to say is that most of the fan fiction that I've noticed getting published, there was that Raylo one, the romance one, the Love Hypothesis. They're like scientists, wasn't that?
Yeah.
Wasn't that Raylo fan fiction initially? Am I wrong?
I've not read those, so I don't.
If I'm wrong, you could shout at us in the comments, but I feel like that started as Raylo fan fiction. I think it's gonna bother me.
I don't know what word you're saying.
Rey from Star Wars and Kylo Ren.
Oh, okay.
Raylo. That's their ship name.
Yeah, listen, I'm so far out of I watched all those movies, but I haven't had a Star Wars related thought in many a time. Unless it's about Baby Yoda, in which case I have many thoughts, but no one's ready.
Yes, yeah. Love Hypothesis was a Raylo fan fiction.
Oh my God.
The internet has confirmed it.
Oh my God. Okay.
And people wouldn't even know that, maybe, except for the appearances of the characters, because it was an AU and has nothing to do with Star Wars. I think they're just scientists.
Like that's, I mean, but this is what I mean, like the power of fan fiction to take it like so out of like, I still don't, I mean, obviously I've not read it, but I'm just like, what are you talking about? Like, how do you even make that like?
Yes. Anyway, what I was saying, the ones that I noticed have gotten a lot like after, and there's one that I can't remember the name of, but that is about to be published or just recently got published. That is a Tom Holland fan fiction. After is based off of
Harry Styles.
One Direction is one's based off of people, because those don't have copyrighted material. Like us, it's usually just, I like this person's vibe or aesthetic, and I'm going to write a story about a self-insert kissing them. 9 times out of 10.
I feel real bad for Harry Styles.
That makes me uncomfy. The fan fiction fan fiction about real people makes me uncomfortable, because that's a human that you are writing about. I can do characters because they don't have feelings and can't be squicked, and it doesn't affect their real life in any capacity. There is no real life to affect. But when I
just meant, because I mean, this is my personal take, but I think the after books are poorly written and also glorify a toxic relationship. So I just feel bad that like they're like, oh my god, this is Harry Styles fan fiction, and then like he's not a great person. And you're like, whoopsie, sorry.
Yeah, he's very mean.
Yeah.
if I know the plot of, I haven't read them myself, but I've heard the plot of at least the first one, and I'm like, that is a bad person. Yeah.
I didn't even think about that too, because I mean, when you said there was a new book coming out that was Tom Holland fan fiction, I just went like, I mean, I didn't even know what to say. And I think that I do agree with that as well.
It like is kind of weird. I'm not going to yuck anybody's yums, but it makes me personally uncomfortable because of that. Like it I guess it could affect somebody's image or their life.
I guess for me, just as a writer, like to me, if I'm like, okay, like, you know, Ray and Kylo, right? Like that was, they had a backstory and there was stories and there's like things and there's world elements that I might be interested in like repurposing or changing up. But I'm just like, Tom Holland, I know the movies that he's been in.
Yeah.
Like for me as a writer, I'm like, wait, what do I do with this now?
Yeah. It's like, I think it's literally just, I think this person is attractive, so I'm using their aesthetic. I mean, what their body looks like.
Fair. Tom Holland is attractive. That is a train I'm on.
Yeah. So I was talking with Isaac. One of the fan fictions that I'm really enjoying, that is a Five Nights at Freddy's fan fiction, is a human AU. So they're not robots, they're humans. And it's what if Bonnie adopted Gregory? And like, there is nothing to do with the robots, nothing to do with Five Nights at Freddy's. It's just a humans with the names and personality traits of the robots.
Oh my God, I'm so glad you just said what if, because I also thinking about like commercially acceptable fan fiction. Like the What If Marvel TV show, and like every single time they've AU'd their own characters.
Yes.
I mean, like, is that not just comic books?
Yeah.
There was a character and then fan fictions abound?
If we're going to talk about comics, because comics, especially long running comics, are handed off between writers over and over again and artists over and over again. There is an element of fan fiction within that sort of long serial narrative when you have multiple people having control over the same characters, and especially something that's been as long running as like Batman. Those are people who grew up reading Batman who are now writing Batman stories, and they're like, now I get to say what happens when they interact with my favorite characters. But it's canon because it's being published by the publisher.
But I also think there's like the difference between, for example, Doctor Who, right?
Yeah.
Which is a very long running series where a new actor has taken over the Doctor multiple times, and they put their own stamp on it and they do their own thing, but canonically it's actually the same character. As opposed to, and I know that technically does happen in comics as well, but as opposed to some of these things where really, like you said, it is just someone saying, you know, now this is my Batman.
Yeah.
Which I think is more.
And that's where you start seeing things like multiverses discussed, because it's like, oh yes, these are completely different stories and different takes. That's when the retelling is like, oh no, the retelling isn't just a retelling. It's just another universe that's all canon. All of it is true. Just which timeline are you in?
I think I just, for me, thinking, like, having that thought about comics and then just knowing, and I mean, it still happens. I think it is maybe less now, but not much less, about people being like, oh, you write fan fiction? Oh, you read fan fiction? And it's just like, okay, like, why are you giving me that face? Like,
this trend, I think, has paralleled the trend because fan fiction and fan art is inherently geek culture. It is usually more of the female geeks, but not necessarily. Just in general, I've noticed that there's a more larger percentage of women that participate in, women and non-binary people that participate in fan fiction. There's totally men who do it, but that's what I see. But it in the same way that liking superheroes and comics is now mainstream, liking fan fiction and participating in that sort of stuff is, I think, also kind of veering more into the mainstream than it was when we were growing up.
Also, there's nothing I can do about the sun now. This is just my face. So enjoy that.
Glows.
I glow. I mean, I'm not going to do that TED talk. I'm not going to go there. I'm ready to send us down, like, you know, also, like, you know, reading as a gendered phenomenon and school and writing as a gendered phenomenon. I mean, there's like stuff in there. I'm not even going to touch it. It's not this discussion. But I also, as it becomes something that can make more money, like,
as you monetize it.
Yeah. And I also think too that there was that spate of books that came out about fan fiction, like about writers of fan fiction, specifically Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell is probably one that a lot of people know. There was also Eliza and Her Monsters. And I forget the author's name on that one. I think her first name was Francesca. But I actually think Eliza and Her Monsters is better than Fangirl. That is my hot take for this evening. But then Rainbow Rowell took it a step further and was like, hey, what if I wrote the books of the fan fiction in a book form?
I read the first one in that series, the Snow, yeah, whatever. Simon Snow series, is that what that was?
Yeah. Which is fan fiction of Harry Potter.
Yes, yeah.
And I mean, like, that I definitely saw after Carry On first came out, when I was before the plague, when we were still participating in like academic conferences. There were like multiple panels that I had attended where people were like, this is just fan fiction inception. Like, what is this even now?
Yeah. That's not the only author I've known to do that too, although in a different way. So Shauna McGuire has a book called Middle Game, which is all the way over there. I'm not going to get up and go get that one. Within which there are chapters and excerpts of a children's book, sort of in the vein of like The Wizard of Oz or like Narnia. And in that world, those books also exist, but these specific books have chapters of this other children's book that she had made up. She has since written those children's books, which might be somewhere closer behind me, but I don't know off the top of my head. I think it's called Over the Garden Wall, something garden. I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but that's also another author that like created their own version of something, and then after publishing Middle Game was like, I'm going to write the whole children's book, not just these fake excerpts that pertained to the plot in this book, and publish that. So yeah, which is also, it's kind of a fan fiction of like Wizard of Oz, Narnia, portal fantasy type stuff.
It's like a fan fiction of their own fiction, which was based off another fiction.
Yeah.
Which is now like a legitimate.
But then, okay, so here's the other thing. Is this a retelling?
Okay. So, I mean, this just makes me salty. That's what this is. So, functionally, it's a retcon.
It is also that, yes.
I mean, because so for anyone who's not familiar with this, by the way, you should go watch our full hour-long discussion of the Hades X Persephone series by Scarlett St. Clair, which is what A Touch of Darkness is the first book of. A Game of Fate is these two books that are now coming out, which are Hades' side of the story, because you only get Persephone's POV in the Hades X Persephone series for the most part.
The A is small.
Oh no.
Why?
Don't like it. Anyway. So the point is now that she's now saying that Hades has this whole other side plot going on and is giving him way more character building.
I've read this one, so I can say this is the first book. It's a retelling of A Touch of Darkness from Hades' perspective. He's got plot going on. This is a better book because there's plot going on than there was in A Touch of Darkness. A Touch of Darkness is her just pining over Hades. Like there's not anything else to their characters, but yes, it integrates character elements to Hades' character that doesn't exist in the first one. It integrates things that fully affect the relationship and the way that their relationship is going in these first books because of what's happening in these books. So yeah, it is a retcon, but it is also a retelling, the same way that Midnight Sun is a retelling of Twilight from Edward's perspective.
Yes, but
or
you don't
Life
have
and
to have
Death.
read Midnight Sun to have read that. Now there is full other plot information in that book that wasn't available to us because that book didn't come out until after the first two books had come out. And now Scarlett St. Clair is telling people that they should read them like this, and I'm salty. I'm salty.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about Life and Death, which is Stephanie Meyer's gender bent fan fiction of her own book?
No.
No. Because is that fan fiction of her own book? It is, isn't it? Gender bent is a fan fiction trope. What if they were?
Yeah, I mean, there's no way that's not fan fiction. It's just the fan happens to be the author.
Also the author, yeah.
Because I don't think she's trying to say like that's not canon, right? Like it's not.
No. It's not canon at all.
She's just messing with her own stuff for some reason.
Yeah, she's like, I really liked the story and other people liked it, so I'm going to rewrite it 3 different times. Interesting, huh? Retellings, fan fiction, fun. It's interesting. I don't know.
Well, I mean, obviously we thought it was interesting enough to do a full like discussion. Once again, we've not, fixed the world, but I think we were just having so much fun discussing all of
just
this
the
stuff.
Concepts of this.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you guys have thoughts, if you guys have like fan fictions or fan fictions of fan fictions of fan fictions of fan fictions that you think we should read, drop those down in the comments. We would love to hear about them. Or, if you disagree or agree with any of the things that we've said, let us know. We're literally just here hanging out as friends and recording it. Content.
I like these things. They're fun. I'm sure that there's people that have like really in-depth discussions. Like okay. For instance, ABO. Do you know what that is?
No.
Alpha, Beta, Omega. Have you heard of?
Oh, yes. You told me about
Omegaverse. I'm not going to give a lesson on the Omegaverse, but there are now published books in the romance genre that use Omegaverse.
Yeah.
That I think came out of fanfiction and was exclusively used in fanfiction for a while. And there was like a bunch of uproar because a particular author was trying to say that the Omegaverse was hers because she was the first one to get published physically, actually published, and was trying to copyright that content. And she lost the case because so many people had been writing it before that book was published in fan fiction that she could not claim it as her original idea. So now there are multiple books that use Omegaverse as the
and there's like a whole, there
in.
are people who like get either like English PhDs or film PhDs in something called adaptation studies.
Yeah.
Like this is a whole thing. There is theory, there is academic. This is not an academic discussion. I don't know if you didn't know that, but that's not.
We might be smart, but we're not that kind of smart.
No.
You wouldn't want to watch that kind of smart necessarily either.
In today's discussion,
it could be fun, but I don't know.
Again, I could give you that kind of talk.
Yeah.
I just had to do all my presentations though, where I did that kind of talk and use that kind of language. And now I'm like, I don't want to talk about that no more.
Don't do it. All right. You have anything else that you wanted to say other than why? I don't imagine this is Neon Gods. Just imagine it is Neon Gods. Why this? Why now? Why this? Why now?
Because Lore Olympus is amazing.
I mean, yes. Do recommend the second volume if you haven't read it already. It's going to be coming out if you want a physical one. If not, Webtoon. The whole thing is there. You can binge it. Season 2 is starting or whatever.
Until you catch up and we're all just like,
yeah, that's where we sit now waiting for Sundays. Hey.
All right, y'all. If you made it this far in the video, thanks for hanging out with us. We hope you had fun.
Sorry, it's unhinged and not organized at all. This is a discussion. This is what we do.
Are we ever hinged?
No.
No. Just checking.
Sometimes it's slightly more structured, though.
That's true. Sometimes we plan.
I have had in the past sticky notes where we like beat for beat had like, you say this, I say this, you say this, I say this. This is not what that is.
That is not what discussions are.
No. Minimum effort, maximum content. Come back next time for something, probably a book review, I think is what we're going to be doing next, if we can read the book.
That's always the question.
You don't know. None of us know.
We don't know.
We don't know. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.